Okay, thank you all for coming in. I'm really happy that this games gathering can be in Bratislava. I hope this will become a tradition, that this is not the first, but not the last games gathering here. Thank you all for coming in. My name is Michael. I will be the host at this hall for all of the day. Yes, coming to the lecture, please welcome Oleg. He will show us his experience and what should we do with ad monetization, how not to shoot ourselves in the foot. And by the way, as I did the research, I found out he found up a studio which has more than 1 billion downloads. So that is truly an achievement. So please put your hands together and welcome Oleg.
Hello, thanks. Let's begin. I'm Oleg Shlyamovych. I'm a founder and CEO of PSV Game Studio, Clever Solutions, and Hippo Kids Game. Firstly, I'd like to thank our European friends and especially GG organizers for their support for Ukrainian people and Ukrainian IT community. Me and all Ukrainians appreciate it very much. PSV Game Studio is among world top 5 developers of kids casual games. We have about 250 downloads on apps on Google Play and App Store with about 900 million downloads. I hope we will reach 1 billion next year. No hope, I'm sure about this. We have used different types of monetization and ads monetization and mediations. We tried AdMove, we tried Appadil, we tried Iron Source, but it was in past. No one of the platforms didn't satisfy us at all, so we decided to build our in-house solution. And we, when we looked at the first benchmarks, it was 2 years ago, we were really impressed and by our results and decided to market it. So what about will be our lecture? During next 40 minutes, I will be sharing my ideas about ads monetization. I will include some valuable advice about it. I hope it will help not shoot yourself in the foot while setting up waterfalls and ads monetization, and then we will take a quick look on major monetization and mediation platforms. Now, then I will be ready to short Q&A. So let's begin. Before we dive in, we should understand that ads monetization can be divided globally into two parts, internal and external part. Internal part is about ad types which we are showing. It's all about placing ads inside the games. This is game designer's role, and the main KPIs there are days per daily active users and user engagement. Of course, affected with this is churn rate. On the other hand, external part of monetization is about ECPM, bidding, waterfalls, price floor, etc. So this is responsibility of ads monetization manager. Of course, these both parts should work together in harmony. When one part works incorrectly, another part is negatively affected as an entire process, and you will lose your revenue. So before we will speak about tips and tricks, I'd like to have a short brief about our vocabulary. There is some very important terminology we should understand absolutely clearly. First one, of course, is ECPM. ECPM is estimated revenue per mile of impressions. In Google AdMob, it's marked as RPM, but it's still ECPM. It's used like a measurement of ad network quality effectiveness, but it's absolutely useless without other very important criteria match rate. Match rate, what is it? Every time when we want to show an ad, we send ad request to all ad networks. When ad network finds the ad, then this network returns it, and we consider such request as matched one. So the matched rate is calculated as the percentage of found ads, match request, and between total number of requests. So these two criteria can be used for measure effectiveness of ad networks, but they are not very suitable to measure entire ads monetization effectiveness. Also, it's very important to not to mismatch match rate with the display rate. Display rate is the percentage of shown ads impressions between matched requests. It can never reach 100%. For interstitial ads, it can reach 80-95%. For rewarded ads, it's usually from 25 till 50%. And actually, this is not ads monetization manager responsibility. This part of internal ads monetization management. So the guy who is responsible for this is the game designer and a little bit your development team. Multiplication of display and match rate gives us a fill rate. So the fill rate is the percentage of impressions out of total request number. In some companies, it's used as one of KPIs of ads monetization manager, but I think this is not right. Otherwise, ads ADRPU, average ads daily revenue per active user, is the main mediation measurement criteria. It shows how much money we receive from a typical user. This is the most important KPI for ads monetization manager, and it's very important not to mix it with ADRPPU. So it's average daily revenue per paying user. It's not for ads monetization, almost. It's affected, but a little one. Also, I strongly recommend measuring the churn rate. Churn rate is the percentage of user who leaves the game. This is a game designer's metric, but ads can affect it greatly. You should check the churn rate of entire mediation and also of every ad networks, because some ad networks, Upload or Aerosons, for example, ask user to close ad up to 3 times to continue playing. This annoys user greatly and affects user retention. Another two very important keywords are latency and ECPM decay. Speaking about latency, latency is a delay which is between initializing ad request and time point where the ad is ready to show. To avoid latency problem, I strongly recommend escalating an ad request as soon as possible. So it means that we should make a new request just after the show the previous ad. This is the first point, and just at the moment of initializing your mediation SDK. And last but not least is ECPM decay. ECPM decay is very nasty thing, which means drop of ad revenue after each impression. So, for example, for the first impression, our ECPM will be 10, and for the fifth impression to this user, our ECPM will be probably 5. The reason why revenue drops is the topic of another lecture, and we will not spend lots of time to speaking about this, but I'm going to have a talk about it in future. To minimize ECPM decay, actually we can do nothing with this, but we can minimize effect. I recommend the first limit when it's suitable the number of daily impressions of a single user, and of course using mediation with the maximum number of daemon. So this means maximum number of ad networks. So now we will speak about 4 ways of integrate ads monetization. Actually, there are 4 ways. First is the easiest one, is use one ad network. It's of course the easiest and minimum profitable way. From other side, creating in-house mediation solution is the hardest way. It can bring you the maximum revenue if you are ready to spend huge amount of time and money for development. Classical mediation solution is a compromise. It significantly increases revenue compared to one network solution, and also decreases development time comparing the in-house mediation. But you should spend the required amount of time for setting up waterfalls manually. The fourth way is programmatic solution. I think this is the future of mediation, and it's projected to eliminate 95% of time for setting up your waterfalls and all external part, which you usually need in classical mediation solutions. Now let's go directly to tips and tricks. Today's tips are not typical. They are a little bit crossing border lines of ads monetization manager responsibility, but nevertheless they are very useful. First one is the first tip is to set up user age as high as you can. I strictly recommend setting up your audience age as adult or mature in almost all non-kids games and apps. Actually, there are 5 categories of ads. Adult 21 plus, absolutely no filter. Ad category has no restrictions. It includes gambling, alcohol, dating, politics, and so on. This category can give the maximum ECPM and match rate, but can injure some amount of prude people, leading to a possible slight decrease of decrease in app rating. Next category is match. Its rating exclude dating, gambling, and direct sexuality in ads. it still has a respectable eCPM, but of course not as high as, for example, for adults. It's suitable for almost all games, excluding the kids-directed and kids-detected games. Teens, this category has all previous restrictions, and also it excludes violence and rude language. This restriction affects your ads revenue greatly because it restricts more than 40% of ads. And last two categories are PG and G. PG is for 7-11 years old, and G is the strict filter. As for me, I recommend, even in all kids apps, use PG because it doesn't affect any laws, but can increase your revenue a little bit in kids app. So for maximizing ads revenue, I recommend setting up age in Google Play and in Ads Network and at the same and maximum possible level. If your content rating in Google Play Store is higher than in Ads Network, you will definitely lose your potential profit. On the other hand, if your ads rating is higher than your rating in Google Play, you are at risk of having your app deleted by reviewers, by market reviewers. The second tip is not to look only at ADRPU, but also on LTV. What does it mean? This means that aggressive ads monetization strategy is good for hyper-casual games, sometimes for kids, but not everywhere, sometimes for casual games. However, it affects retention, and in games with a long gameplay, actually if your gameplay is more than 1 hour, it affects greatly, and in turn revenue. So higher IDRPU on the first day probably will cost you decreased of your LTV on the 16th day, for example. Get into the specifics, I recommend overuse interstitial and banners in hyper casual and any apps where user engagement is less than 1 hour, and don't overuse them in mid-core and hardcore games. So in mid-core and hardcore, best format is of course rewarded video. Also offer are suitable too. The third tip is connected to the second one and is to A/B test and check how disable playable and cards, how disable playable and cards will affect your LTVs and churn rate. This means that stop. Yes. This means that if you will A/B test such kind of impression, you will probably lose your ARDAU, but you will got strong increase on LTV for example 30th day. Now let's go to the fourth tip. It's common, but I want to insist that it is very useful and some developers still don't use it. So is to send impression level data to your analytics systems. This will definitely help your UA team to set up TROS campaigns. Even if you are indie developer, you can send these kind of events to the Firebells and then try TROS campaign in Google Ads. It is much easier than it seems. So the fifth tip is not to clone several same ad placement in one app for several times. What does it mean? The best practice is to use only one ad placement for each ad format. In some cases, some developers use several calls in order to separate each call for analytic purposes. I'm sure that it is not correct. It doesn't have any sense, because you can use for your any analytic software solution and receive much more data, and you will lose your potential revenue if you use such type of integration. Why? If you have three placements, for example, for a rewarded video, you most probably will receive the same responses for them. This means that if your user sees all three placements, you will show the same ad 3 times. This will definitely limit user experience and bring and maximize your eCPM decay for this for such type of user. You can lose up to 75% of the revenue for the third ad unit in such type of integration. If you will use only one ad placement, you will receive your ads one after another, and the mediation algorithm will help you to minimize eCPM decay. So, next tip is to use cross-promotion to limit most part of mediation platforms. As you probably know, almost all mediators have their own affiliated ad networks, and all except Google have some affiliated publishers. The problem that we can't understood how fair each auction is. But we can notice that share of impression for AdMob, Iron Source, and Uploading networks is maximized when their mediations are being used. So, in this case, I recommend using cross-promotion to limit ad network's possibility to have your CPM impression for next to nothing with 1 cent eCPM. For example, several years ago, we started in-house campaign in AdMob mediation. It was 3 or 4 years ago when we used AdMob as main mediation. What we had done, we set up cross-promotion for US for 15 cents for banner, $1 for interstitial, and 1.2 for rewarded video. It's very, very low prices for US. This has decreased LTV for our game for 1.3% only, but has increased install amount for almost 7%. So in the first month we saw 5% of revenue increase even with such extremely primitive setup. Now in Clever Ads solution we use a much more effective method. So for example, we have 2 games. One game is the shop, the supermarket game with LTV about 33 cents, and another game is hospital game with LTV about 30 cents. We have 2 creatives and measured the IPMs. IPMs, I mean installs per mile of impressions. The shop video have lasts 24 seconds and has 32.9 IPM. The hospital video have 44.1 IPM. We can measure our eCPM limits, which are IPM multiplicating LTV, and we see 1139 for our shop game and 13 0.23 for our hospital game. This means that if we have bits 1139 for cross promotion, one moment, this means that if we receive in a hospital game price from the ad network less than 1323, it will be much easier to send and show our cross promotion game for such impression. The next tip is about offer walls. I recommend to use offer walls wisely when it's possible. Actually, they are powerful monetization tool, but you should use them only in proper amount of apps. They will bring you next to nothing in hyper casual or classical match 3 games. However, it makes sense if the economy of the game is oriented on towards in-app purchase, especially if your ads revenue stream exceeds 30%. This is very good for non-paying user who prefer watching rewarded video. The eighth tip is very basic, but we should speak about it. This is about the previous one, sorry. And the next tip is to keep your waterfalls updated. So if you're thinking that you already have set up waterfall one time and job is done, you are making a big mistake. Don't forget to update your waterfalls. You should update them at minimum 2-3 times a month, but I recommend to do it on weekly basis, especially for top performing tiers and geos. It's it's very important to check and update your waterfall in 2-3 days after starting any large-scale user acquisition campaign. The ninth tip is don't forget about user concern. User concern is an absolutely critical tip for ads revenue increase, as it allows us to show personalized ads. What does it mean? It means that if you integrate any classical mediation solution and don't set up user consent dialog, you are at risk of huge penalties according to EU and US regulation, up to 15 euros per user. Every user which ever downloaded your app, because in classical mediation all users consent as agreed for personalized ads. This is not right. If you will send, from other hand, if you will not personalize ad for user, you will lose up to 40% of the revenue. In any case, it's much better to show user consent dialogues than not to show. The sub-tip here is to hide and complicate users' options to disable personalized ads. If you can see, this is our typical dialogue, and in such kind of integration we have 94% of agreed user for personalized ad. It's very good numbers. And last but not least, don't forget about app ads.txt. We were surprised that by the fact that some developers forgot to submit their app ads.txt on the websites and forgot to keep them updated. And they lose lots of money because of it. Keep this in mind. You can see in this slide the difference in one app before and after integrating app ads.txt. So we just put this file on your website, and you will you see that your revenue grows for about 12-15%. Now we are going to the final part, how to make the right choice of users mediation. Actually, there are three accession points, three very important criteria. The first one and the main is the profitability. It's, of course, the most important criteria. The second one is the simplicity of integration and setting up everything. And surely the last one is the tech stack. The best way to understand profitability, of course, is A/B testing. Regarding simplicity of integration, we should understand how easy is to integrate SDK. Do you need to integrate adapters for each ad network? How difficult is to set up waterfall? Do you need to create and manage account on each ad network? Of course, support response time is extremely important criteria. In my opinion, favorites here are programmatic solutions. Regarding tech stack, we need to understand the vitals, INR and crash rates, and of course, granular reporting possibility. Let's have a close look for each mediation solution. As we have limited time, I will describe only main advantages and disadvantages. All classical mediation solutions have one main advantage. They have no direct commission. Also, AdMob has a good cross-promotion system and huge demand side. Mac's main advantage is tech stack, and Iron Source now has a more friendly interface and best integrated BI, in my humble opinion. Now let me say a few words about the disadvantages. AdMob has poor support. Actually, the pain of working with them is not only a problem of those publishers who work with them as the mediation solution, but also for those who are using AdMob as single ad network. Iron Source has worse tech stack than other competitors, and you are at risk to cross Google recommended border of crash rate. But if you spend required amount of time, you can decrease it. And loan up. And also, Iron Source has a long response time, up to 48 hours. Regarding Max, it has limited opportunities for apps with less than 10K DAU. Also, these mediations are affiliated with the relevant ad networks. After M&A between Unity and Iron Source, I think that we should forget about Unity mediation. I think it will close in nearest future. Now let's look closer to programmatic ones. They are clever at solutions and upper deal. Their advantages are they have only one SDK for all ad networks. They are easy to integrate. You don't need to set up waterfalls. They have a responsible support, free cross promotion, but they both charge commission. This is the key disadvantages of them. Frankly speaking, any free solution from big players means that they monetize you in other way. But let's return to programmatic solutions. Apadil Apadil has the best interface and BI, in my humble opinion. And the biggest question for them is stability, INR, and crash rate. Also, it affiliated with Bid Machine. The last platform is Clever Solution. It's our platform. We are only independent platform. We have a free intellectual cross promotion. And you have to spend minimum time to set up and maintain mediation. As for our disadvantages, I should accept that interface and customization of our network are weak points, but we are working for improve them. So how we choose what kind of solution you should use, manual or automatic? Just like in a car, you can do some special trick using manual gears, but automatic shift is preferable for me in almost all cases. In any case, and choosing any classical mediation system, if your DAU is less than 5K, mean wasting lots of time and without any significant uplift. Most mediators have affiliated ad networks. So they will have a conflict of interest. The publisher want to maximize his ads revenue, but affiliated ad network want to win the auction with the minimum bid, and then use this cheap impression to for advertising affiliated publisher studio. So which is the better? I think that there is no right answer. You should A/B test all of them. How you should do this? You should test it in the same time, in the same app. And this means that the best practice is stage rollout in Google Play, and where you can roll out your experimental release on 50% of your traffic. I recommend to use app with DAU more than 2,000 users. It significantly decreases your testing time. Of course, you should compare not eCPMs, but ADRPU. If you don't trust some new mediation platforms, then you can run your A/B test on your average app, not the top one, and on the small percentage of traffic in the new platform. So this is a typical sample of what we are having. You see increase of eCPM and see the increase of ad revenues. So the second one performs best. However, my recommendation is to use independent programmatic platform with a hybrid monetization model. Such platform works better than other due to machine learning, smart segmentation, and big data, finding the best price for each impression. So use these tips and tricks and enjoy the cash flow. I think we have 2 or 3 minutes for Q&A. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
To continue, if we will not have enough time, come to our booth downstairs, and I will be ready to answer all questions.
Thank you very much for the insights, results of A/B tests, and the recommendations. It has been very insightful. We've got actually more than 3 minutes for the questions, so feel free to ask, like raise hands. I will come to you, and you can give the questions.
Hello again. So my question would be, you showed that slide with your hospital game and your supermarket game. How did you test the creatives to calculate the IPM? Where did you test them?
We use our promotion system. Actually, we use the best way to test your creatives is to use in your cross promotion. if we are speaking about cross-promotion system, this definitely means that the best way to understand how it works separately in different apps. For example, ads, if you see, it was supermarket ad. It shows us 44 IPM in the hospital game and only 15 IPM in monster truck game. So it depends greatly from the game where the ad is shown. In our cross promotion system, we see all this and match IPM from game to game.
Okay, so you set up a test. You don't put your cross promo as a backfill for those, cheap placements. You test them in equal conditions, and then you choose which creative you will use as your backfill.
No, not as
Not
as
as
our
backfill.
backfill. We put it in the waterfalls. They participate in bidding.
Okay, so you test them outside the waterfall, and then the best one you put
No,
it in a
we
waterfall.
put them in the waterfall first day as the higher, most valuable creative. We receive a big amount of impression, and then
Okay, I see. On
put-
the first place, you put it on the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? In that case, I've got a question. So I see many developers are struggling with development capacities. So it's hard for them to test all of the solutions, mediations, and stuff like that. And the second thing is the heaviness of the applications, like implemented multiple SDKs to really build a good like mediation. What are your recommendations in this space?
Look, the first one is you should understand how big you are, how much time you are ready to spend for setting up waterfalls. So if your DAU in one app is less than 5K users, I don't recommend to think about classical mediation solution at all. So programmatic is the best way. You spend minimum time and use maximum time and get maximum revenue. If you have more than 5, 10K DAU, then you have more options. My first recommendation is to compare your current solution with programmatic one, and then choose if programmatic one is better, move to programmatic. The advantage of programmatic mediation is there is much easier to A/B test it with any other solution than any other. Because in programmatic we are using our own ad networks account. You don't need to set up anything. So if we speaking about the classical solution, you need about 2-3 days to set up everything. In programmatic, you need 3-4 hours. It has greatly difference. Also, you will definitely shoot twice or 3 times in your food while setting up the waterfalls if you are not keen on them. So you should ask or hire some ads monetization manager. But actually, I think this profession is going to sunset with the programmatic, because a robot can do this better.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? In that case, Oleg, thank you very much for coming, for sharing your experience. If you've got any more questions you would like to discuss deeper, Oleg is with colleagues, is on the conference all time. They have also the booth, so feel free to stop by and discuss your specific case. We'll continue with a talk with Katie about culturalization and adjusting your game for like specific audiences. So feel free to stay, and we'll continue in like 15 minutes.
Yes, I would like to add that you see little cards on your chairs. This is linked to our English-speaking Telegram chat where we speak about ads monetization and etc. Now there is about 130 members, and we have also a huge Russian-speaking channel with about 4,000 active members. But our English channel we launched not far ago, and it grows every day. And I hope next year it will beat the Russian one. Okay, thank you very much once more. Bye bye.